So my name is Chris Chapman. Look out in the audience. I think I worked with a few familiar faces out there, all with some rollouts. General disclaimer, if we bring up anything IBM related, I don't think we will be for this session. So for myself, primarily worked in the BI space, have done some TM1 as well, worked in rollouts for both implementations, worked for 10, and then a number of different version 11 releases. I'll hand it over to Roy for continue from there.
All right, yeah, my name is Roy Cornelius. Been working with Cognos for, 15 years now, back impromptu, reportnet days, a little bit of Java development in there, but yeah, been with PM Square for a while now, working primarily in the Cognos area. All right, so agenda for today, but before I get started, I just wanted to mention the handouts that I think everybody got. If anybody didn't get one, let us know. And our kind of idea behind those was that we figured that if you're coming to this session, that you're most likely in the middle of a rollout or thinking about a rollout. And so we wanted to give you this just to kind of take notes, and as we talk about ideas and concepts, that you can kind of take notes about your own rollout, start thinking about it, and maybe jot down some questions we can discuss at the end. I also wanted to point out that, well, we're going to probably talk about Cognos Analytics kind of specifically. This is really more of a general overall rollout strategy plan. It could work for doing a Cognos upgrade, it could work for rolling out new features, it could work for something entirely not Cognos, any sort of change or anything you want to push through the organization. All these concepts are, for the most part, still apply, so keep that in mind. All right, so on to the agenda. So what we want to talk about is, well, why is a rollout strategy needed? What's the big deal? And then once we kind of are all convinced that, of course, a rollout strategy is needed, then we'll go through some of these steps and talk about them in a little bit more detail about how to create an effective rollout strategy. Okay, why is a rollout strategy needed? Well, companies, when they want to roll something out, they're trying to implement a change. And I think most companies, when they're trying to do this change, have some goal in mind. There's something they want to gain from this change. They're not just doing it to be mean and screw up people's lives, at least for the most part, I don't think. So they want to gain a value from this. And I don't know, I think after you've been in this IT world at all, you have probably experienced a poorly done rollout at some point or another in your career. And you can kind of feel like, you get out there, you don't have the training, somebody just hands you this tool and says, here, use it. You don't have the training to be able to do it. They didn't communicate how to use it. They don't provide you a way to get support on it. Something like that is bound to happen at some point. And you get frustrated, you get, anxiety. You're like, I had this routine all set up with my old tool, and now you give me this one, and I don't know how to use it, and it's frustrating. And you tend to not want to use that tool, and you want to go back to the old way, and you're resistant to this change. And that's when the company had this goal in mind, but if you're not using the tool, if you're not doing this change, they're not getting anything out of it. So for the company to get value, they need to make it more comfortable or provide you with the information and training that you need to be able to use this tool. And that's where the rollout strategy comes in, that we want to be able to provide people the information. We want to be able to make sure the tool is functional. We want to make sure that they have what they need to ease those fears, to hopefully, even if we can build some excitement and make them drive to use this tool, would be great. I mean, that's kind of our goal. And then that's where the user adoption comes in. They want to use this tool. They feel empowered to use this tool. And then that's where the company gets their increased value. People feel more empowered. The change works. The company gets what their goal was. So that's why a rollout strategy is very important. Okay. So as we talk about a rollout strategy, if I'm going to do a rollout strategy, one of the first things that I want to do is a little bit of planning. And this, works for rollout strategies, project plans, whatever. I want to take a little bit of step back and think about how big of a change is this. And And this is sort of both from the technology and the implementation plan of what I'm going to have to do, but a big part of that is also how big of a change is this for my user base? How much are they going to have to change based on what we're doing here? So think about it, is this an upgrade? Like, you know, if you're upgrading from Cognos 10 to Cognos 11.1, well, that's a pretty big jump. You know, the UI changes, new functionality there. So we need to keep that in mind kind of as we go forward of this is a big jump for my users. If it's just, you know, like a dot release 11.1.2 to 11.1.3, you know, maybe we can scale back some of this, the rest of the stuff we're going to talk about. Still kind of follows the same flow, but we don't need to put quite as much effort into it. And this same sort of thing works if we're just rolling out new features. So maybe you're not upgrading Cognos at all, but you're rolling out data modules and dashboards. You know, this same kind of flow applies. And after we kind of think through that, we want to make sure for this rollout that we have our stakeholders. And these are, you know, project sponsors, management, the project team actually doing the implementation. In BI world, we like to get our business unit leads because most of them generally have a bunch of reports in our environment, so we want to make sure they're all communicated with. And these are the people that we want to make sure we communicate with regularly and make sure that they know how the project is going and when we especially hit any milestones, because they're going to help us later on. They're going to help us sell our tool. They're going to, you know, help communicate to the organization and help get it out there. So before we do anything, we just want to make sure that we have that list of people in mind. And then I like to start taking a look at project risks. We're not going to be able to come up with everything. You know, we're bound to run into some things we don't plan for. But if we can at least knock out some of the critical ones, like is there an SLA that we need to make sure that when we do this rollout, we have an environment up for, you know, some amount of time? Are there business critical reports? And if, you know, something bad happens with this rollout and people aren't able to run them, what's the impact of that? How is this going to, you know, impact the organization? And then once we get this full list or kind of brainstorming session of what could go wrong, we start to assess the likelihood. You know, how likely is this to happen? And then if it does, how big of an impact is it? And depending on kind of how that fits, if it's, you know, likely to happen and causes a big impact, we definitely want to write this down, you know, come up with a contingency plan, at least, you know, who am I going to talk to? Who are we going to get involved if this does happen? Because as you're going through a project, if you run into one of these, you start scrambling and looking for stuff. If you can get at least a little bit documented ahead of time, it helps. Make sure that you're prepared as you run into things. All right, once we kind of get the whole planning stuff down, and we start getting a feel for what the project looks like, I also like to put together a communication plan. And this is before we even start working on the project, because kind of similar to the risks, as I'm going through the project, communication is one of those things that sort of gets left behind. You know, you're working on the implementation, you're working on doing this, and you forget to tell people, hey, this change is coming. And, you know, you read the thing, what if, and I know this sounds kooky, we communicated with the employees. You know, it's something people are afraid of change, but that's a big part, they're just not aware of it. And when it just sort of lands in your lap, of course you're going to be afraid of it. But if you can kind of communicate with them and get used to it ahead of time, it's a big help. So in all of the communications that are going to go out kind of as part of this project, the number one thing I want to do is build excitement for this. All right, I want to get the people their information, get the information they need to them, but I want to do it in such a way that it kind of empowers them and gives them excitement about what's coming. Like, you know, talk about the new features, talk about these, you know, exciting new features that are coming out in this change that we're making. I also like to give regular updates throughout the project. You know, you may increase them as it gets closer to rollout time, but we want to keep people informed, give them a heads up it's coming, communicate with them throughout. And then I also like to keep those communications informative but short, because if anybody's like me, you get this email from some team that's, you know, a wall of text, and you tend to sort of skip over it. You know, it's probably not important, I'll just read that some other time and never come back to it. So I like to if I do have a lot of details I want to provide, at least give a bulleted list or some sort of summary at the top that gets people the information that they need. People who want the details then can continue reading, or provide a link to some other location to give them that information. And then especially diagrams and screenshots, anywhere that you can give a picture, people are a lot more likely to take a look at it and understand what's in it than read a whole bunch of details. And then if there's anything that's very important that you want to make sure people get out, use your stakeholders. Have them forward that communication out to people, because people are more likely to read something if it's coming from their boss or someone that they know instead of just some project team. Okay, so those are kind of the general things. Now I want to talk through some of the specific communications that I like to send out. And this initial communication is just kind of to create project awareness. I like to do this one sort of right after the project plan is created. I have some idea of kind of when rollout's going to happen, but maybe not specific. Maybe I can just say, Q3 or something like that, just to give people a little bit of a heads up of this is coming. Start preparing for it. And they're going to want to know, why is it changing? Why do I have to go through this? And they want to know, how is it going to affect me is the big one. How is this going to change my daily life? And you may not be able to give all of these answers, but you can kind of start setting it up and just give them a little bit of a heads up and say, this is coming. There's going to be a few changes, but it shouldn't be too bad. And we'll make sure that we give you training along the way. And then as the project goes along, I like to send out sneak previews, is what I call them. So these are just kind of to continue to build excitement. This could be, depending on the length of the project, once every few weeks or once a month, just send something out and say, hey, this is still coming. Give them some highlights. Here's some of the new features, especially like on a big change from Cognos 10 to 11. I want to start giving them some screenshots of the UI changes just to start getting them used to, here's what it's going to look like, so they're not scared off the first time they log in. And then especially let them know what training options are going to be available. Because people need that information. If they don't feel like they're going to be have what they need to do their job, they're going to start getting more anxious and they're going to be resistant to it as soon as it comes out. But as long as they know that training is coming and when it's coming, and that they're going to be able to get that information they need, it'll go a long way. And then when the rollout finally comes, I obviously need to communicate that out with the details, specifically when is it happening, what do the people need to do. So is it like a new link or a new location they need to go, make sure that they know what they need to do. And then include, how do they get help? Is it, do they open an incident ticket? Do they send an email? Where do they go for help? Make sure that they have that information. And then again, communicate, is there training available? Because once people are able to actually get in there and use it, they're going to realize they don't know something, and they're going to need to be able to get that training somewhere. And we'll talk about some details on that in just a minute. And then even after rollout, I like to continue to send a little bit of communication just to continue to build momentum. Once they're in there, send them helpful tips. Say, this functionality really worked for this team. Maybe it will be useful for you too. Just keep them interested, keep them coming. Provide a comment box that they can communicate back to you, give you that information. You maybe won't be able to do everything, but maybe you can open an RFP for IBM or something. Just to try to help them feel like they're getting listened to, and by keeping them engaged. Okay, so now we kind of have the communication plan laid out. And like I said, I try to do that kind of ahead of time just to make sure that I have at least milestones, placeholders in my project plan of here's where I'm going to send this communication so it doesn't get lost in the shuffle. And then when it gets to that time, you can kind of add in the details. Okay, and once I get that, then I want to start thinking about this training, because that's another important thing to make sure that people have. And we want to consider a few things when we look at the training options that we have. First, we want to look at the different levels of users. So you have certain people that just log in and run a report. Okay, so like an upgrade or a change probably isn't going to be too big for them. Your report authors will obviously need a little bit more training. Admins, data modelers, the more complex it starts getting, the more training that you need to have. So just make sure that you have each of those people supported with some form of training. And you also need to look at different learning styles. Some people want to go to formal training, get that base, take their time, learn. learn it all. Other people are more likely to accept it if they just get a demo and are able to go in and play around themselves. And they don't really like formal training. It just takes too long and it doesn't do it for them. So likely the best approach is to try to give multiple options if that's a possibility. And some of those options that we have are, that formal training, and obviously PM Square provides that training. Check it out. But that doesn't always work for everybody. Either time, you don't have time to go to it, budget to be able to put it in. But there's also webinars out there. PM Square does some, IBM does some, a ton of them online. You can check out webinars for those kind of people. I also did lunch and learns. I did quite a few lunch and learns at a recent client that seemed to go over pretty well. And those are just like, a 45-minute session on beginning report authoring or something like that. It just gets people coming to you, starting to look at the tool, starting to get a little bit of an understanding on it, and then they can take it back and work on it themselves. There's also a ton of YouTube videos out there. IBM links to them from within the Cognos interface, but just go check it out. I think there's a couple hundred YouTube videos at least out there for Cognos functionality specifically, but YouTube has everything. So whatever tool you're using, keep that in mind. Q&A sessions, just kind of an open house for people to come in and ask questions. You could set up an online forum. There's a bunch online, but you could also do it internally for people to just come in and write questions. Depending on your company culture, that may or may not work well, but just another place for people to get information. And then quick reference guides is another one I like to do that's just 1 or 2 pages on a particular topic. Scheduling reports, for example, put together a couple pages. You could do another one on drill throughs, and you start to build up this library that people know to go to. And if they have this question, they go look at it, get the information they need quickly, and get back to work. Tough part on those is maintaining as you go through upgrades. So it takes a little bit of extra work to keep those going. All right, once we kind of get all of those put together and all of our planning and training and communication plans, then we start looking into the next step, which is testing. And I will pass it over to Chris.
Thanks, Rory. Yeah, so as Rory said, the next step will be the testing phase. We poll 10 different organizations. We just poll everyone here. We ask, how do you test in your organization? What does that mean to you? Everyone will have a different response. Here are some of the more common methods. As far as products, you have Modio, Load Runner, JMeter, Upload. These are things that can automate it. You can also just do manual. Just have users go in, start clicking away, punching away, and doing that. There is no wrong or right method. I would say most companies I've worked with will do a blend of all of them. You need users hands-on, getting in there, working with it, to see things that the automated scripts might not do. But if, especially on a very large implementation, you have thousands of users, tens of thousands of reports, it can be really complicated to get in and look at all of those or give any meaningful cross-sample of, is everything working? And that's when some of these automated tools will help. And for that, I think the really key there is to really plan ahead. When using any of those automated tools, I always try to give the advice, don't try to boil the ocean all in one shot. If you do have a lot of reports that you're trying to manage through here, those scripts are very useful, very cool, and can do a lot of things. It's just that they can do a lot of things, and you may want them to do a lot of things. And to do that can require a lot of setup time and love and work to get those to work as you would expect and have the trust that when you hit go, it'll run, and when you get the results, you can trust those results. So if you do start exploring some of these tools, I would say start slow, maybe just do some quick validation, make sure everything can run, and then if you want to do something more complicated, like let's test the actual output from dev to prod. Do these financial numbers match? Start with a handful of reports and then start rolling it out over time until you have a more robust script. The top level here, who are your testers and getting on their calendar. If you do any UAT end user testing, I promise you, if nothing is on their calendar, they won't do it. It's not that they don't care, but everyone gets busy. Everyone has busy calendars. And so if you need any end user time or anyone's time to go in and do any kind of testing for you, make sure you block it out for them. Because if not, it probably won't fall down to that. Rollout, actually looking at doing the rollout itself. So there are a couple different methodologies you can use. The big bang approach or a phase. So a big bang is just that. We're just doing a hard cutoff, everyone run over the new system. No iterative approach. With phase, you do more iterative approach. You may take a smaller group within the company, have them pilot it, get on the new system. Once that's gone well, then you'll do the next and the next and the next. Done both personally. There is neither, well, on the right, you can see here some of the pros and cons. For the big bang, obviously, it's much simpler. You have a hard deadline. Hey, we're cutting over on this date. You're cut over. The problems there is everything is live in the new system. So if there are any bugs or any issues, it could be much more chaotic. So you're having to manage your whole company, a lot of different questions. If the bug or issues aren't related to specific reports, it might be that dashboards aren't working right, if your package isn't functioning right, it's shared amongst groups. Having to manage a lot of different support tickets and different people and different levels of anger amongst different people, having to do that all at once. Whereas in phase, you can isolate that. You have a simpler user base, maybe just a lot of relational reporting. Smaller number of reports, let them go first, be the guinea pig. Another good thing here is for any issues you do find, you can segment those high profile users. So on C-level, never want to get that call from a vice president saying, hey, I normally have this report at 7 a.m. every day, where is it? Because schedules didn't get imported correctly. So that's another way to kind of shield yourself from any unwanted things. So again, here are the two different approaches. It'll depend on your business needs, level of comfort, and what works best for your business. Things to consider for the rollout, definitely have a hard deadline, even remove access to an old system, so you're cutting over, let's say from 10 to 11, and that's all on a new servers. Remove that old URL, don't let anyone access it. If you leave it out there, they're still going to go there because everyone's a creature of habit, and they don't like anything new or changing, and if you don't force it, there will still be people out there lingering. Regardless of what the change is, coordinate backups and do a backup of everything. I'll typically do databases, VM images, content store exports. Never needed any of them, but I know the day I need to, I'll want them. And I said, regardless of the size of the scope for the change, it's important. So I had an example. Was doing an upgrade, and it was from 10 to 11, but it was going through and testing, and I was running all the reports. Everything was fine. Everything looked great. Then we started looking at dashboards, and dashboards would fail. Well, it turns out they didn't configure a JDBC connection to the data sources, and there's a whole story of technical reasons why it wasn't configured, why it didn't work. But it broke dashboards. And pushed out to users that wouldn't have worked. So even if it was something, we mentioned just rolling out a small change, like, oh, we're just going to deploy dashboards, well, go wrong. There'd be a lot of little gotchas in your environment that you may not be aware of until you've really gotten your hands on it, or until users have gotten out there and played with it. So it's important to have all these backups. So if you need to pivot and roll back quickly, you'd be able to do so. I thought this was important. Let's execute that go live plan. So all the planning that you've done around this, follow those steps. Whether it's upgrading the servers, rolling out the new URLs, go ahead and follow those and push out those updates to your users. Also use this as a time to sell the system. So, like I said, most likely we're going to have some users do some kind of hands-on testing. You may have done a train-the-trainer situation. That's pretty common. You use those people to sell the system. This is why you want to use dashboards. This is why you want to use data modules. This is why you should be excited to learn overall. You help them socialize. It's kind of like with your parents, right? You know, you never listen to your parents, but your friends tell you to do something. Okay, you're more likely to do it. Same kind of situation here. You can also have kind of open house sessions. You just come in, ask questions. You know, I've always wanted to do this. Can the new version do this? Can you help me with this? Sometimes they're more likely to bring some of those questions face to face rather than over IM or over email. And all this is really to just ensure that your company gains value from this investment. Not just an investment of software, but all the time and resources gone to deploying it and pushing it out. Making sure the user base is excited and wanting those features is critical. So for tracking, a couple different ways you can look at tracking. Number one would be issue handling. For this, all hands on deck, everyone around. For the instance that there are bugs, there are issues that people need help with, but we talked about communication, we talked about training. No matter how many emails you send, videos you make, guides you send out, workshop sessions you have, there will be users that will ignore it all and will log in and say, well, this is different. Or why isn't this work? I used to be able to do this. What happened? Where did this move? So you need as many people to field those to help even smooth over some of those lack of training issues as well. And then user adoption. So a couple different ways you can look at user adoption. Cognos has the built-in audit database and reports that gives you some visibility. It was mentioned earlier today, Teamsware Thrive solution, which gives a lot more direct insight and also more visual, more graphical, easier to see than just having to go in and do your own queries against the audit database, but something to look at as well. But what these will do is go back to the, what we're talking about is gaining the value. Okay, you've rolled this out, was it worth it? If you have to show any ROI, show value, show that people are actually using what you've done and that this is the tool for your company, these would provide you hard numbers to go to management and say, no, this is working, people are leveraging this, this is something we need to continue to invest in. So, just to reiterate, as we conclude, first, go through, plan out everything, regardless of how large that change is, go through step by step of what will need to be done, so you have a clear path forward, and tell everyone what you're going to do, why you're going to do it. More communication is better than less communication. Offer as much training that would be needed. Test. Done a lot of testing, various types over my career, and can't reiterate enough. There will always be something that slips through the cracks, but you can do as much of that testing up front, alleviate that pain of having to scramble on go live days. It makes everyone's life a lot easier. And then finally, roll out the changes, follow and execute the plan, deliver those changes to the end users, and then do your best to track both issues, training problems, and then user adoption as you move forward with the changes. So that will open to any questions that anyone has.